Let's get started with our first objective, and that's learning how to set up your models in Inventor CAM. The first step in defining the machining toolpath is to define the setup for the operations. And in fact, there can be actually multiple setups that exist and in your model, depending on really what the geometry that is being machined. The setup defines the type of machine as well as the operation. It controls the work coordinate system of the model, the geometry that's going to be machined, as well as the stock that's going to be used to machine it. And finally, some of the basic settings for the post-processing that will be done once the files and all the toolpaths are added. And this is all done by clicking Setup on the Job panel to bring up the Setup palette. In addition to the palette, the model also display changes, so it shows a yellow highlighted line or highlighted model, and this is representing the stock that's going to be used. And as well, you actually also see the WCS, the work coordinate system as well, the default one that's being displayed on the model. The setup palette has 3 tabs that are used to fully define the setup. The palettes in Inventor CAM are generally designed so that you work from left to right. However, personally, in terms of the setup, I tend to skip straight to the stock and define that first, even before I define the information on this first setup panel. The toolpaths that you'll be generating within Inventor CAM are based on the stock, so that's why I always start here. It's based on the stock that's going to be removed. Therefore, the proper definition of your stock is really a key step in setting up your operation. There are a number of different options that you can use within the mode drop-down list to define that shape. There are box, cylinder, and tube shapes. And you can also define the size in 2 different ways. So relative to the model geometry, or actually a fixed value size as well. For example, in my model here, you can see that the relative box size is used, and it's keeping a relative size relative to the actual geometry that I want to machine. In addition to that, you can assign offset values to add stock to the top, the bottom, and sides. I tend to use the relative options more frequently, as they do have the ability to incorporate a little bit more in design intent into my setup, in a sense that if the model's overall size changes, so does the stock. If you use the fixed sizes and you make a change to the model size, you'll actually have to go in and manually update the size of your stock. The other convenient option here is the From Solid option, which does enable you to actually select model geometry directly in your model that you might use if the box, the cylinder, or the tube shapes aren't what you want to use. After that, I return back to my setup page, and this is where then I would define my machine and my setup options. In terms of this, I'd be using a milling machine. In addition as well, I will be defining my work coordinate system. And this is really what is used to set the orientation for your cutting plane of your machine. So it's a very important step in defining your setup. By default, the WCS is displayed in the same orientation as the model's coordinate system. For milling machines, the Z-axis should point perpendicular to the surface that's being machined. So in many cases, because the default is actually the model coordinate system, you will likely have to change this to reflect what you're going to be doing in terms of the orientation on your milling machine. So in my demonstration, I'll actually get into what are some of the different options to control that are. The final selection may or may not be needed. This is to define the model in the fixture. By default, the model is pre-selected, but in some cases, especially if you're using a multi-body design or in an assembly situation, you might actually have to refine the model selection and define your fixture. The final tab here is the post-process tab, and in general, this is just default settings that you would use when you go into post-processing. However, these can be also defined when you actually get to the post-process stage.